two hats to wear. One was two grieving sons wanting to cry, grieve, and process that grief because of losing our mum. And two was the royal hat, show no emotion, get out there, meet the people, shake the hands.
Thank you.
William.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, God, I'm going to cry forever.
The UK literally swept me and William up as their children, with an expectation to see myself and William out and about. It was really hard for the two of us.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so royalty in the UK sense are symbolic. They're actual people, but they're also symbolic of something. And this goes way, way back in history, actually back to times when royalty were actually sacrificial as well. They would have to go through tests that were emblematic of the tests that we all go through. So here he talks about these two hats. There's one hat which is him, the grieving son. That's Harry, the person. Okay, and there's another one that has to go out there and shake hands and be the avatar for other people's grief. He has to show nothing, and others must cry around him. He becomes the symbol of the grieving son, not the grieving son. He becomes the symbol of the grieving person who has lost somebody too early. All of us probably at some point have experienced others in our family feeling like they've lost somebody, a friend, a family member, too early. They went too quick. It's a tragedy. And one of the things that royalty is there to do, other stars are there to do it as well, but royalty is especially important for it, is to have a national theatre, something that we can live these elements of life to come through and experience them. Even if we're not going to experience them ourselves, we get that experience of what it's like to lose somebody early. So I totally get what he's talking about there. Is he got a very important symbolic role and a real human one as well. And it's difficult to work out those two things. Yeah, that would be a tough one to deal with, to work out what it is. What is your job? Why are you here? Why did you get lumbered with this piece? It is quite bizarre. He does say the UK literally swept us up like their children. Well, yeah, because you are their children. That's your job, is to be the nation's children. I know you didn't sign a contract on that one, but that's your job. And I think now the job that they're looking for is to be the divorced family. I mean, divorced from the family. So we can experience that. What's it like to leave your family? What's it like to leave that institution? What's that tear going to be like? It's going to be pretty painful. We get to live that now through them. I think that's their possible symbolic role, even though they maybe don't know it at this point. Or maybe they do. Maybe they're smarter than that. Chase, what you got on this one?
Yeah, when he says literally swept them up, that's not how you use the word literally. Start with that. They did not get swept up by a broom or anything. Didn't happen there. But Greg says this all the time in a different way than I do. And it's the organism does what makes the organism successful. So I want, from a behavioral perspective, and not from a body language perspective, a behavioral perspective here, we're seeing the message of when I was a child, being in a position of suffering brings assistance and adoption by many. So if that made an organism successful, what would they do as a grown-up? Maybe we would see them make a suffering documentary about themselves. So as much judgment as we're casting here, everyone watching this is as guilty as I am, as Harry is. We are doing what made us successful when we were younger. And I think that's what this entire documentary is. The suffering, or being in a state of suffering, brought about adoption and brought assistance from thousands and thousands of people. And you can see it right here. The entire video, even this one clip, is completely focused on the personal aspects of royal life and the pressure to grieve and all of the stuff that's going on here. Scott, what do you got?
I agree with you. It's not literally, it'd be figuratively. You nailed that one before I got to it. Anyway, he's still very relaxed. His vocal tone has softened, though. He's getting a little bit more serious here, as you would expect at this situation. His cadence slows down a little bit, and he's sort of leaning into this from an emotional standpoint. There are no visible signs of grief on his face, although he's talking about things that should engineer, the brain should engineer grief for this, but it doesn't seem to be doing that. His illustrators have slowed down a little bit. They're not as big. But this is important to him. That's why he's so focused on it. And I think it's because this is who he sees himself as. Like Mark was saying, this is him. He's talking about, in other words, he's talking about himself. I think you nailed it, Mark. I don't think I could go much further than that. But he's the child whose mother died. That's who he is. And that's how much further can you go when that's what he's trying to be. And you juxtapose that from, the how they used to love him, how they figuratively swept him up, he and his brother up, and loved him so much, and now juxtaposed against how that same media and everything hates him now. You've got this really weird movie situation going on, but there's not really any of that happening. And this in there, to me, it looks like it's all up here where most of that's originating. But that's all I got. I think we're down to who he thinks he is. So, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, they didn't just lose his mother. He lost Diana, which is a big deal. I mean, look, everybody loses their mother, not everybody loses Diana, I think is part of it. And that public grieving. And trust me, when I say that, I'm not taking anything away from people losing their mother. But when you're him and your mother was this iconic thing, if you see him talk about his mother's face is a light and then it goes away. But he starts where he's illustrating what he's thinking. And you can't miss, Mark, I love we had this hat and this hat. And you're dead on. He's now going to talk about we were kind of royals, but now we are ex-royals. So I think we're getting back to that equation now. And I think everything you're saying here is dead on, is separating those. And Chase, the organism, it's funny. That's my thing. I was drawing a box around when you were saying that, because I have exactly the same thing in here. The organism does what made the organism successful. Often when I say successful, I don't mean necessarily healthy. It can be all kinds of successful. If I've gotten what I need and it released dopamine, and in a more horrific time like this, then it's more possible I'm going to do it. If you really want some good body language, really sad to see, look at him. Well, first of all, when he starts to talk about grief, watch his brow tips rise in the center. That's sorrow. And that looks real. He's really telling you what he thinks. But at 13 seconds, one of the best photos I've ever seen of internal voice and process shows up. This little kid, this 12-year-old, is standing there with his eyes down to the left and his tongue out of his mouth as he's trying to process what this means. That tells you it left him in a place. That's a kid going through that. And I think all of that coming out of it, where he says literally, means figuratively, people embracing him became kind of what he needed. And, then when they turned their back on him, it's a hell of a lot harder than it was before. So when he starts to get in trouble in this next video, the self-pity just starts to pile up. That's all I got.
2 hats to wear. One was 2 grieving sons wanting to cry, grieve, and process that grief because of losing our mum. And 2 was the royal hat, show no emotion, get out there, meet the people, shake the hands.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
William.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, God, I'm going to cry forever.
The UK literally swept me and William up as their children, with an expectation to see myself and William out and about. It was really hard for the 2 of us.
If you like this video, get the full body language breakdown and analysis on our main channel by clicking this video right here.